People have asked me to explain what anxiety is, how it works, and how to break the anxiety loop. So if you're experiencing anxiety or panic, this video will help you understand what is actually happening, why it feels so intense, and why it can be changed. And I want to start with something that most people do not hear often enough. Anxiety is not who you are. It is not your personality. It is not a permanent flaw. Anxiety is a process, a learned pattern in the nervous system, and once you understand the process, you stop treating it like a mysterious enemy and start treating it like something your system is doing automatically because it learned to do it. Now, when I say doing, I do not mean you chose anxiety, and I do not mean you are creating it on purpose. I mean something very specific. At some point, your brain and body learned a certain reaction sequence, and now, when the first signal appears, your system runs that sequence the same way it runs any other habit, like bracing before a loud noise or pulling your hand away from something hot. So anxiety is not something you are. It is something that happens, and it is also something your system does, because it learned that this reaction might keep you safe. And the good news is simple, even if the experience is not. What is learned can be relearned. To make this make sense, we need to talk about what your brain is designed to do. Your brain's main job is not happiness, and not productivity, and not being fine. Its main job is survival, which means it is constantly scanning for threat, and it is always trying to predict what might go wrong so it can prevent it. And this is crucial. The brain does not only respond to real external danger, it also responds to internal signals, like a shift in breathing, a strange sensation, a thought that feels alarming, a memory, or even a subtle change in mood that your system has learned to associate with danger. That means anxiety often starts very small, long before panic. It can be a micro spike, a little flicker, a tiny wave of tension, a sudden, something just changed feeling. Sometimes it's in the chest, sometimes in the stomach. Sometimes it's just the mind becoming a little more alert and watchful. We can call that early signal yellow, not because it is bad, but because it is the warning light, the moment where the system begins to rise. Yellow is not panic. Yellow is the beginning of activation. Here is where the loop usually forms. When yellow appears, most people react to it in a very understandable way, which is they try to figure it out and stop it. The mind goes, why is this happening? What does this mean? What if it gets worse? What if I can't control it? And that reaction is the moment where anxiety becomes self-feeding, because the brain interprets the attempt to stop it as evidence that there must be danger. Think about it. If you are trying hard to prevent something, your brain assumes there is something to prevent. Once the brain buys the idea that there is danger, it does what it is built to do, which is, it mobilizes the body. Stress hormones rise, adrenaline increases, the heart may beat faster, breathing often becomes more shallow or irregular, muscles tighten, attention narrows, and the whole system begins to lean upward, as if it needs to act quickly. And people often blame themselves here, because they notice the symptoms and they think, I'm losing it. But the truth is the symptoms are not proof of failure. They are proof your system is running a protective program. Now let's talk neurobiology in plain language. When the survival system ramps up, the brain reallocates resources. The parts of your mind that do long-term planning, nuanced reasoning, and perspective, the parts that can say, this is uncomfortable but not dangerous, tend to lose influence because the brain prioritizes speed over complexity. That is why anxiety feels irrational, even when you understand it. It is not that you are irrational, it is that the brain is in a mode where it values quick protection more than calm analysis. This is also why reassurance often does not work once the loop is running. You can tell yourself you are safe, but the body is already acting as if you are not, and the body sends its signals back up to the brain. Heart racing, chest tight, breathing strange, stomach tense, a sense of urgency, a sense of something is wrong. And then the mind reacts to those signals again, tries harder to control them, and that effort tells the system, yes, this is serious, and now the loop strengthens. That is the anxiety loop. So the loop is not just thoughts, and it is not just body sensations. It is the relationship between them. A sensation appears, the mind interprets it as danger, the body escalates, the mind interprets the escalation as proof, and the cycle feeds itself. And over time, the brain learns that the early signal itself is dangerous, so it starts reacting faster and earlier, which is why people say it starts out of nowhere, when in reality it starts with a small yellow cue that the system has learned to treat like an alarm. This is the part most people miss, and it changes everything when you really see it. Anxiety is not solved the way a real external problem is solved, because the threat is often not a single concrete thing you can remove. Anxiety is a prediction problem, a body-based alarm pattern, and the more you try to solve it with pressure, control, and constant monitoring, the more you feed the very system you want to calm. So anxiety becomes something you do in response to a signal, again, not on purpose, but as a learned reflex. You check, you analyze, you brace, you try to stop it, and that entire effort is interpreted by the nervous system as danger. Breaking the loop begins with a different relationship to that first signal. The goal is not to never feel yellow. Yellow is part of being human. The goal is to train your system to interpret yellow as information, not as danger. Instead of, oh no, it becomes, oh, that's the signal, which means you stop feeding it and you change direction. That direction is downward regulation, meaning you guide the body back towards stability rather than letting it ramp upward into red. And this is where somatic training matters, because the nervous system does not learn by intellectual understanding alone. It learns by experience, repetition, and timing, meaning you practice the new response right at the moment the old pattern begins. In the early signal, you use a simple anchor, a gesture, a physical cue, and you let that cue trigger a downshift, shoulders softening, breathing settling, attention widening, the body remembering safety rather than chasing certainty. This is not forcing calm, it is teaching direction. Here's a useful way to think about it. Your nervous system has two general directions it can move. Upward into mobilization, which feels like tension, urgency, bracing, spiraling, and sometimes panic. Or downward into regulation, which feels like settling, softening, breathing more normally, attention becoming wider, and the mind becoming less obsessed with solving the moment. The training is basically teaching your system that when yellow appears, the correct move is not go up, but go down. Now, I want to be honest about something that actually increases trust. This does not work because of magic words, and it does not work because someone tells you to relax. It works because the brain is plastic, meaning it changes with repeated experience. And because the nervous system can learn safety the same way it learned threat, through association and repetition. Every time you catch yellow and you respond with downward regulation instead of upward control, the brain learns, this signal is not danger, and the loop loses strength. This also explains why so many people get stuck for years, even if they are intelligent, reflective, and have read everything. They understand the loop, but they have not trained the system at the level where the loop is generated. Because the loop is not only cognitive, it is embodied. It lives in attention, breathing, muscle tone, and the automatic interpretations the brain makes based on sensation. So change needs to be practiced in the body, not just known in the mind. Now, what does breaking the loop look like in real life? It looks like noticing the first flicker, the first tightening, the first urge to monitor yourself, and instead of zooming in on it and trying to fix it, you recognize it as yellow, and you do the thing you have trained, the gesture, the softening, the breath settling, the attention widening, and a kind of internal, whatever, not as suppression, but as refusal to feed it. The signal can still be there, but the spiral does not start because you changed direction early. And over time, something important happens, which is the most satisfying part. You stop being afraid of the signal. The signal becomes ordinary. And when it becomes ordinary, it has nothing to attach to, because the loop needs fear and urgency to keep spinning. So you are not controlling anxiety. You are removing the fuel that keeps it alive, and your nervous system starts choosing the regulated direction by itself because it has learned a better pattern. If this explanation made sense to you, and if it feels grounded, you can check the link in the description. We have a free guide that explains the loop and how to break it in a clear way. And we've also built a simple training program that guides you step by step through retraining your response so anxiety stops running the system. No hype, no fluff, and no pressure. And if you want more videos like this, you can like the video and subscribe, because we'll be teaching nervous system regulation, anxiety, stress, panic patterns, and eventually related topics like trauma responses and recovery in a way that stays practical and real. Take care, and I'll see you around.